So this week you're going to work on creating portraits. And from our last week's assignment, or 2 weeks ago assignment, you already were introduced to how to use a mask to be able to see through parts of one layer onto the content of another layer. And for those of you who did the Charles Cohen practice, that's exactly how you went about it. You put a color on a layer underneath, and you created a mask on the layer with the person, and it allowed you to see through that layer onto the layer below that had the solid color. Well, we could also use masks to create composite portraits, and that's what your assignment is going to be this week. Continuing with masks and using a regular layer mask, we're also going to talk about how to use a clipping mask. A clipping mask is when you create a relationship between two different layers, such as in this example here. I have a layer with a water droplet on top, and I have a layer with the image of the vase below. And I've clipped my water droplet to only fill into the shape and only be seen by the layer that has the vase on it. So I've clipped the water droplet into the shape of the vase. And then I've added a regular layer mask on top of it to create a transition, a gradient in between the two. And so you can now clearly see the composite, that this was made up of two different images. So keep in mind, all of the practices that I cover here in my video tutorials are what I would like you to practice in your assignment for this week. So even though I'm doing this with two objects, I would like you to think about how you could do this with portraiture. And I'm going to show you an example later on in the video of doing this with portraiture. So starting out from the beginning, first of all, I'll go through my history panel and I'll step back to the stage where I've just pasted. So you start out with your image of your vase, and you want to make a selection of the vase and copy and paste it over into the other image. So you could take your selection tool and you could select the background and then inverse it. I'm going to skip this step because my computer keeps going to black every time I make a selection. So I'm going to let you avoid having to see that flashing. You can select the vase and copy it, or select the background and then go up to select and choose inverse and then get just the vase. And you're going to copy and paste it over into the water droplet picture. It's going to come out as the layer on top. And to create the layer mask, what we want is actually for the layer that has the full content, the full image, to be on top. So typically, you're going to have two layers. One layer is going to take up your entire space, and that's going to have the main image. And another layer needs to be just a selection. A layer mask is only going to work if you have a second layer that is just a single object. It's not going to work if my layer 2 was filled all the way from edge to edge. It has to be just an object. So think kind of like you're creating something new where you're copying and pasting various image elements onto its own layer. So I need to switch my layer order. So now I have on the top the image of the water droplet, and on the bottom I have the image of the vase. To create that clipping mask, to have that relationship, all I need to do is hold the Alt key down and put my mouse in between the two layers that I want to create that relationship of the clipping mask with. And I click it, and it indents my layer 1, showing that it is now being clipped to the shape that was underneath. And this is the end result. Is I see the outline of my vase, but it's filled with the water droplet. And I can take my Move tool, and depending on which layer I'm selected on, I can move the content. So if I want to reshape that water droplet so it's right in the middle, as long as I'm on layer 1, I can move it around. If I want to move the actual vase, I'm going to go to layer 2, and I want to make sure my auto select is turned off because it will try to grab my layer 1, and I can move that the vase around as well. So that's pretty neat. This is how you can fill the one object with an image of another one. And just the trick to kind of remember is the image that you want to fill is what should go up on top. The second layer needs to be a selection, just a single object. Now I can continue from here and I can create a layer mask. And I'm going to go down to my layers panel and click on the layer mask icon. Oh, sorry, I actually didn't want that to be on that layer. I want it to be on my layer 1. I'm going to go backwards, make sure I'm on layer 1, the water droplet layer, create that mask. And now to create that kind of gradient soft edge that you've seen probably in several of the artist examples, although they were doing it either in the camera or in the darkroom, I'm going to use the gradient tool. So gradient tool, I have my layer mask selected. I have black as my foreground color and white as my background color. You can try it with this reversed and you'll see what the result is. It's just going to be the opposite of what I've done. And I'm going to start a little bit above the vase and click and drag about halfway down. And now you can see in my layers panel, the top part is black, which means it's showing through to the layer underneath. And then I have a soft transition, that's my gradient, and it shows through to white. So if I want to get to see a little bit more of the vase, I'm just going to click and I'll drag down a little bit farther. And now you can see how I can start to see a little bit more of the vase, and I have a gradient. So that's a clipping mask with a regular layer mask, and to get that transition to show the composite, I'm using the gradient tool while I'm on my layer mask.